Did the PS4 just save the PS5 again? This latest Sony purchase sounds really good, and this might be one of the worst PS Plus months yet. How's it going, everyone? Welcome to PSReady. Hope you had a great weekend filled with playing video games. I saw a ton of people playing Armored Core 6 on my PlayStation app, and that's awesome because I feel like it's kind of crazy for From Software to go back to the series that kind of started it all for them, that never really got amazing reviews or anything like that. But because of the pedigree they built with games like Dark Souls and Elden Ring, now people are going back and re-looking at this series with a new light. And because of all the things they learned from those other games, it seems like they're applying that to this one. So it's really cool to see a game like this come out and do as well as it is. But we're sticking with Armored Core 6 for the first news story because since it's a From Software game, it's coming out and having performance issues pretty much no matter where you play it. Digital Foundry put out their performance review, and this is another case of a game that runs better on the PlayStation 5 than the Xbox Series X, which is good and not really surprising because we keep seeing that all the time. But unfortunately, no matter what console you play it on, there are going to be pretty major frame dips, and the more you get into the game, when you start getting more weather effects, more characters on screen, just more stuff going on in the world, those frame drops can go from dropping from 60 to 50 like you'll see in the early game to dropping from 60 all the way down to 30, which you'll see in the middle towards the end of the game. And if you have VRR, of course, that'll smooth things out unless you're dropping down to 30, right? Like VRR only really works if you're dropping to like 48 FPS or above. So that's kind of frustrating because everyone who's looked into this, specifically with Elden Ring, is realizing that the reason it's not running so great on consoles like the PlayStation 5 is because From Software just doesn't do a lot of optimizing. They literally just finish the game, they ship it as is, and unless the issues are really bad like they usually are on PC, they don't go out of their way to patch very much stuff. Like if a quest line is broken or characters aren't interacting with you the right way, or there's an actual glitch like with the boss where you can beat it too easily, that's the kind of stuff they'll turn around and go fix. But if you're talking like frame pacing issues or FPS drops, that is something that they hardly if ever pay attention to. But just like with Elden Ring, the PS4 version of this game, Armored Core 6, is coming in clutch and saving the day because even though Bandai Namco and From Software have said if you play the PS4 version on your PlayStation 5, even though it's going to use the PS4 Pro version, it's still going to be like 2160p 30 FPS. It turns out that if you do it, it just runs at a perfectly locked 60 FPS pretty much throughout the entire game. Now, the unfortunate thing here, I think, is that you would have to specifically buy the PlayStation 4 version of the game. I'm pretty sure it has a free PS5 upgrade, so regardless, maybe you want to buy the PS4 version of the game, but if you do have it, you can just download it to your console and you'll probably notice immediately that not only does it run a lot better, but it's not like it really looks all that much worse than the PS5 native version of the game. This is super frustrating for a few reasons. First of all, it's like if the game can run at a locked 60 FPS, it's annoying that there is a performance mode in the PS5 version, but it obviously doesn't go far enough because if it worked as intended, it would probably just run the PS4 Pro graphic settings and be able to hold a locked 60 FPS because these consoles are very similar in architecture. And it's also frustrating because we'll probably never see a patch that improves the PS5 version to run as well as the PS4 version. This is a situation we've been seeing a lot with cross-gen games where theoretically they can run better on the PlayStation 4. So if you run that PS4 version on the PS5, you're going to get better performance out of it. But I wish developers would kind of just like look at this and say, well, if we run it at these settings on the PlayStation 5, it'll run at 60, but we want to make sure it looks as good as possible. This generation is like the first generation where gamers are realizing how important 60 FPS is. They kind of like open the bottle and it's really tough to put the genie back in, right? Now, of course, this is a situation that'll happen less and less as time goes on because people are going to continue upgrading to the PlayStation 5. And eventually we'll hit that point where it's just not financially viable to keep releasing games on the PlayStation 4 because so many gamers have upgraded to the PlayStation 5, and that'll start happening quicker once they release the PS5 Slim and the PS5 Pro next year. But until that really starts to happen, you know, that flip over to the PS5 generation, which, you know, is crazy that we're 2.5 years in and they still are focusing on the PlayStation 4, we're going to see games like this that come out and run better on the PS4. So once again, the PS4 gamers, and specifically the PS4 Pro gamers, are kind of getting the last laugh here, right? Like the game runs well on last gen, and if you have a PS4 Pro and you buy this game on the PS4 and then buy a PS5 and upgrade it, you're still going to be able to play that PS4 version and get a great experience from top to bottom. Regardless, I picked this game up day one. I'm super excited to play it. I love that the focus in the game is like learning what weapons you have to equip to your mech to take on specific bosses. It's less like a Souls game, which is more of like a battle of attrition where you have to learn the rhythm of the attacks and kind of dodge out of the way and then do your chip damage until the boss is finally dead. And it's like you just have to pick the right railgun to shoot a boss's helmet off and then just blow it up across the map. And the fact that it's more a shooter than a melee action game really gets me excited for it. I just couldn't play it this weekend because I had friends in town, but I'm really excited to try it out after I finish editing this video. So yeah, if you picked up Armored Core 6 and you've been playing in performance mode and you're disappointed with the frame drops that happen later in the game, figure out a way to get the PS4 version, because if you run it in PS4 Pro mode, you're going to get a great resolution, good settings, and a solid 60 FPS all the way through. Next up here, let's talk about this new acquisition from Sony, because it's a weird one that's kind of coming out of left field, and to me at least, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So it was announced at the end of last week that Sony just picked up a company called Audeze, which I had heard of, but I didn't really know what they did. So I looked into it, and they make really high-end headphones that are both good for gaming. They have specifically like labeled gaming headsets that you can use as a headset when you're playing on your PS5, but those headphones are also rated to be good enough to like edit music tracks and hear the different levels of all the instruments and stuff. I'm not an audio engineer. I don't totally know what all this means, but they say that they're like audiophile grade headphones, and they review that way. Like when they get sent out to game reviewers, they test out the headphones. They're like, yup, they sound really good. And then when they get sent out to audiophiles, they're like, yup, they sound really good. Of course, because these are high-end premium headphones, if you want to get the gamer version of them, they're going to be around $300. And the weird thing is, just like their acquisition with Bungie, Sony is going to continue to let them make headphones that aren't just focused on the PlayStation 5 or the PS4, I guess, too. They're going to be making headphones that work with Xbox and PC, but I would guess personally that this new PlayStation Link technology that's like proprietary Bluetooth or whatever that Sony came up with for the new Pulse Elite and Explore versions of their headphones, I would guess we'll definitely see that in these new Audeze headphones that are going to come out after this purchase goes through. But they do make a point to say that this is going to affect PlayStation's audio technology. The reason I'm just not seeing the philosophy here on Sony's part is that they're already really good at making headphones. I love earbuds. I love trying out all different kinds of wireless earbuds. The best earbuds I've personally ever used are the WF-1000 Mark IVs. The reason I don't use them all the time is because it has possibly the most poorly designed like AirPod style case ever. It's extremely tall and long, so it sticks out in your pocket, right? Like when you're walking down the street, you don't want people to be looking at your pocket and seeing this massive AirPod case, because A, they'll make fun of you. It's like the equivalent of having green bubbles, right? Like no one likes that, and they're gonna see you're not AirPods and they're gonna go, look at this clown. He paid like $200 for Android headphones. So I just kind of split the difference and I use the Beats Studio Buds Plus because they're clear and I like the see-through 90s look, you know, and they sound pretty good too. I'm not an AirPods guy. But yeah, in addition to those headphones, Sony also makes the Link Buds S, which are like their true competitor to AirPods. They're not like audiophile grade headphones or whatever. I see TikTokers who do music reviews, do ad spots for them all the time. I've seen my buddy Ken over at Danky do a whole video about them, so those are good headphones. They also have the whole InZone line, which is made to work with PlayStation. There's the H3, H7, and H9. The H7s are the headphones I use when I'm gaming, and they sound incredibly good, and they have the same features as the Pulse Elite, where you can connect them to the dongle in your PC or your PS5 and they'll work great, but you can also keep the Bluetooth active, so if someone calls you or you're listening to a podcast or anything like that on your phone, you can filter that audio through at the exact same time. And you can set, I was gonna call it a dimmer switch. It's not a dimmer switch. You can set the fade between the two audio sources. So if you're playing Destiny, you can get some metal music in there, turn down the in-game soundtrack and make your own soundtrack, which I have done multiple times because I have like 400 hours in that game and the music gets boring. So knowing that Sony's already really good at headphones, to see them spend all this money on a headphone company just to get that little extra good technology from them to implement later, I think there's like better ways they could probably be spending their money, like buying up more studios, since as soon as this Activision Blizzard deal goes through, you know Microsoft's just going to turn around and start buying up more studios, and the more Sony can like kind of piecemeal together in the meantime, that stops Xbox from buying them. They could also invest this money into single player games instead of doing stuff like multiple $300 headphones, live service games, multiple different console editions, the Project Q or PlayStation Portal as it's called now. It seems like they're just spreading their money out so thin instead of focusing it all on gaming, which ironically is how they got into this position in the first place. I guess we're just gonna have to wait and see, because I'm really curious if these headphones that come out from Audeze are going to be labeled as PlayStation, PlayStation, because even though the in-zone stuff is like looking like a PlayStation 5 aesthetically, it's never really marketed as a Sony product. It never shows up at the state of play. They barely ever mention it. So it seems like they want to have some really good headphones to come out in the PlayStation division that can kind of compete with other divisions at Sony that are trying to kind of bridge the gap. But it's a weird Japanese setup they got going over there at this corporation, where they have infighting and competition, where they can have one part of the company buy a different headphone brand instead of just going over to the office of the other part of the company that makes really good headphones. But yeah, it's just weird to see Sony be like, yes, we are doubling down on headphones. We're doing the Pulse Elites, the Pulse Explore, we have the InZones over at our other division, and now we're buying another headphone company to make even more headphones. Like, how many headphones do people need, right? And the last news story I have for you guys today is about a leaked PS Plus Essential game that we're getting this month. And honestly, like, out of all the games that could leak and be the standalone title, I think this is one that really needs some good ones to back it up, because it's the remake of Saints Row. This one came out, I think, either at the end of last year or at the beginning of this year, and regardless, I put about 3 or 4 hours into it because I ended up getting a review copy, and I'm not lying, I never say stuff like this. I really try not to punch down. This is one of the worst games I've ever played. It runs like crap, it doesn't even look that good, the story is terrible, the writing just isn't funny, and this ended up being like a massive flop for Embracer Group, to the point where they were like shocked, and I genuinely don't know how, because from the second it was announced, people were looking at the graphics, they were looking at the gameplay, they were looking at the story, and they were like shouting from the rooftops at Embracer saying this is simply not good enough. You guys are totally missing the point of what Saints Row was back in the day, and you're just using this name to peddle us a totally different game, and you know, it didn't really work out for them. Now, the difference between PS Plus Essential and something like Games with Gold, which isn't even around anymore, is Sony can kind of sit back here and say, guys, I know this month doesn't have the best game ever, I'm sorry, but look at the past year of games that you've gotten from us here at PlayStation. And it kind of is a fair argument on their part, but all I'm gonna say is, like, I'm paying monthly for this, I want to make sure I'm getting good games, and this totally reeks of a situation where Embracer is just doing anything they can to get a little bit of cash that's connected to this game, so the next time their earnings call comes up, they can say it only lost like $10 million instead of 15 or 20. As much as I love getting the huge collection of games with PS Plus Extra, that is one downside that I'm seeing quite frequently. Before the whole extra library launched and everything like that, when you would have a new game coming up towards the end of the year, like God of War, for example, Sony would smartly put the first game in that series as a PS Plus Essential game, so you could add it to your account forever as long as you're paying for PS Plus and play through the last game in the series. But with Spider-Man 2 coming out October 20th, not only have they not added it to PS Plus lately, they actually went ahead and removed Spider-Man Remastered from the extra library just a couple months ago, so people would have to go out and buy Miles Morales' Ultimate Edition for $50 so that they could get the PS5 version of Miles Morales and the PS5 version of Spider-Man Remastered. And hey, I really think that once a first-party game is in the extra library, it should just stay there in perpetuity. There's really no reason to take these games out, because Sony's strategy with putting first-party games into the library in the first place is well after they've sold through all the copies they're going to sell. Like, around the same time back in the day you would see a game hit greatest hits, that's about the time frame Sony's on for putting it into the PS Plus Extra collection. And B, taking them out right before the next game in a series comes out, when people would theoretically really want to play that first game in the series, that's like, yes, a shrewd business move for sure, and because Sony is on top, no one's ever really going to like criticize them too bad for it, but it's like a lot different from the Sony we were seeing during the PS3 and PS4 generation, when they were on their apology tour doing everything they could to give us both power with the PS4 and value with the games they were putting out. But now it seems like they're going for anything that will make them a quick buck, and I hope that they kind of re-strategize here a little bit as people start to complain more. But overall, it needs to be said that PS Plus Essential has been killing it this year. We have got so many great games. Like, I used to not really ever add the games to my library for a little bit just because I owned most of them, and this is one of the first years since I've ever gotten PS Plus that I've had something really cool to download every month, and getting Sea of Stars in August was an awesome little bonus as well. So yeah, that's all I've got for you today in this edition of PlayStation News. Make sure you let me know what you think down in the comments below. Remember to subscribe and set your notifications to all if you haven't already. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.